Close your eyes as you are about to travel to Switzerland, where the story of a young Albert Einstein begins. Long before the world would know his name, before the books, the theories, and the discoveries, there was simply a quiet boy who preferred questions to answers. The evening settles softly over Europe. The streets grow silent, lamps begin to glow behind distant windows, and somewhere, many years ago, a young boy sits quietly beside his own. Albert was not a child who rushed through the world. He spoke slowly, thought deeply, and often remained silent while other children laughed and played. While many boys ran through fields and crowded streets, Albert preferred stillness. He enjoyed sitting alone, watching shadows move across walls or listening to the ticking of clocks. To those around him, he sometimes appeared distant. Teachers often believed he was distracted. Other children could not always understand him. Yet inside his quiet mind lived an endless stream of questions. Why does light travel? Why do stars shine? Why does time seem to move differently on certain days? As evening fell outside his family home, Albert often sat beside the window, watching the sky slowly darken. The first stars would appear one by one above the rooftops, and he would wonder what existed beyond them. One day, when Albert was still very young, his father showed him a small object that would remain in his memory for the rest of his life. It was a simple compass. The needle inside moved quietly, always pointing in the same direction. No matter how the compass was turned, the needle seemed to obey an invisible force. Young Albert stared at it for a very long time. He could not see the force. He could not touch it. Yet something unseen was guiding the needle. For the first time, he began to understand that the universe might contain invisible laws, hidden beneath the surface of ordinary life. As the days passed, his curiosity only grew. Books slowly became his companions. He discovered mathematics, numbers, and geometry. The certainty of mathematics brought him comfort. While the world around him often seemed confusing, numbers remained patient and predictable. Many evenings found him sitting quietly with a book in his hands while the sounds of the household slowly faded. Outside, the streets would grow dark. Inside, the lamp would continue to burn. Albert did not seek attention. He did not dream of becoming famous. He simply wished to understand. Years passed. The young boy grew older, though his habits changed very little. He still enjoyed solitude. He still preferred questions to answers. He still found beauty in quiet rooms and thoughtful evenings. Yet life around him was changing. His family faced difficulties. New opportunities appeared in distant places. Conversations about moving, studying, and beginning again slowly entered the household. The mountains and peaceful towns of Switzerland lay far away, waiting quietly beyond the horizon. Albert could not yet know how important that country would become in his life. He could not know that old classrooms, quiet streets, and evenings beside tall windows would shape the thoughts that later changed the world. For now, he remained simply a young student with endless curiosity. Outside his window, the night sky stretched above him. The stars appeared exactly as they always had. The clocks continued to tick. The compass needle continued to point north. And somewhere inside the mind of a quiet boy, the first questions had begun. As the evening grows darker and the world becomes still, the young Albert closes his book and looks once more toward the sky. The future remains unknown. The mountains of Switzerland still lie far away, but the journey has already begun. And somewhere beyond the darkness, another classroom waits. The morning arrives slowly. A soft light spreads across the sky as the train moves steadily toward Switzerland. Outside the window, fields pass quietly, small villages appear in the distance, and the air itself seems different. Young Albert sits silently beside the glass, watching the world change before his eyes. The noise of the larger cities has faded behind him. Ahead lie mountains, lakes, and towns he has never seen. The journey feels long, yet peaceful. The steady rhythm of the train wheels becomes almost comforting. Other passengers speak softly, read newspapers, or gaze outside. Albert does much the same. He has always enjoyed watching rather than speaking. As the train moves deeper into Switzerland, the landscape begins to change. Rolling hills rise gently from the earth. Rivers reflect the morning light. Tall church towers stand above quiet towns. The distant mountains rest beneath the clouds, their snow-covered peaks appearing almost unreal. For the first time, Albert feels that he has entered a different kind of world. The streets seem calmer. The air feels cooler. Even the silence appears different. When he finally arrives, the town feels smaller than the places he has known before. Stone buildings line narrow streets. Small shops sit beneath wooden signs. Bells ring softly from distant towers. People move calmly through the streets. There is no rush, no great noise, only the steady rhythm of daily life. As evening approaches, Albert walks slowly beside the river. The water moves quietly beneath old bridges. Lamps begin to glow in nearby windows. The mountains in the distance slowly disappear into the fading light. For a young man who has often felt different, Switzerland offers silence, time to think. The schools here are different as well. The classrooms are filled with old wooden desks and tall windows that allow sunlight to enter during the day. The walls are lined with books. Chalk dust rests upon dark boards. The rooms feel serious yet peaceful. Albert notices these details immediately. While other students hurry through the halls, he often lingers behind, observing the room itself. He studies the patterns of light upon the floor, the sounds of footsteps in empty corridors, and the way evening enters through the tall glass windows. The teachers speak of mathematics, science, and philosophy. Some lessons interest him greatly. Others do not. But even when the classroom becomes quiet, Albert remains curious. Many evenings find him walking home alone beneath the fading sky. The streets of Switzerland grow quiet early. Shopkeepers close their doors. Lanterns appear one by one. The cool air carries the distant sound of bells. Sometimes he stops beside the lake. Sometimes he watches the mountains. And sometimes he simply walks. The world around him feels peaceful, and within that peace his thoughts begin to grow stronger. He wonders about light. He wonders about time. He wonders about forces that cannot be seen. Questions continue to follow him wherever he goes. Yet here, among the quiet towns and old buildings of Switzerland, those questions no longer feel strange. They feel welcome. As autumn slowly arrives, the leaves begin to fall from the trees surrounding the school. The mornings become colder. Mist gathers over the streets. The classrooms grow darker as the days shorten. Albert often chooses a seat beside the window. From there, he can watch the changing sky while listening to the lessons. The world outside and the world inside seem equally important to him. Numbers on the board, clouds above the rooftops, equations, sunlight, questions. As the other students gather their books and leave at the end of the day, Albert sometimes remains behind. The classroom becomes silent. Dust floats through the evening light. The wooden floor creaks softly. And for the first time, the young student discovers that he enjoys being alone. Not because he dislikes others, but because solitude allows him to think. Outside, the mountains stand quietly beneath the evening sky. Inside, a young student sits beside a window. The journey to Switzerland has ended. But another journey, one far greater than the first, is only beginning. And in the quiet classroom waiting ahead, Albert Einstein will soon begin asking questions that no one has ever asked before. The mornings arrive beneath pale skies, and a cool mist settles over the streets before the sun has fully risen. The stone buildings appear softer beneath the fog, and the distant mountains seem to disappear into the clouds. Albert walks to school each morning with his books beneath his arm. The streets remain quiet. The sound of footsteps echoes gently between the old buildings, and smoke rises from chimneys as the town slowly awakens. Inside the school, the classrooms feel warm against the cold outside air. Wooden desks stand in neat rows. Tall windows reach almost to the ceiling. Shelves of books rest quietly along the walls. The room itself feels ancient. The dark wood, the fading chalk, and the soft light entering through the windows create a place that Albert immediately loves. While many students hurry into class speaking with one another, Albert often arrives early. He enjoys the silence before the lesson begins. The empty room allows him to think. He places his books upon his desk beside the window and watches the morning light slowly spread across the floor. Dust drifts through the air, moving gently in the sunlight. There is something comforting about these quiet moments. Lessons begin. Mathematics fills the blackboard. Teachers explain equations and scientific ideas. Some students listen carefully while others become distracted. Albert listens, but his thoughts often travel further. When he learns about numbers, he wonders why mathematics describes the world so perfectly. When he studies light, he wonders how it truly moves. When he hears about nature, He wonders whether unseen laws govern everything around him. Questions continue to fill his mind. As the day passes, clouds gather outside. Rain falls softly against the windows. The classroom grows darker. The sound of chalk against the board mixes with the distant sound of wind. Many students find the weather gloomy. Albert finds it peaceful. When the final lesson ends, chairs move, books close, and footsteps fill the hallway. Students leave quickly, eager to return home before the evening rain grows stronger. But Albert often remains. He sits quietly beside the window. Outside, the streets begin to empty. The lamps are lit one by one. Rain travels slowly down the glass. Inside the classroom, only silence remains. The empty desks around him seem almost alive in the fading light. The old room breathes quietly. Wood creaks softly. The air smells of books, paper, and chalk. And there, beside the window, the young student begins to discover something important. He enjoys being alone. Not loneliness. Not sadness. Simply solitude. In these silent hours, his mind feels free. He opens books that interest him. He reads beyond his lessons. He studies mathematics that has not yet been assigned. Sometimes he simply watches the changing sky. The clouds over Switzerland move slowly across the mountains. The sun disappears early during winter. Darkness arrives gently. The classroom becomes a world of its own. One evening, snow begins to fall. Large snowflakes drift quietly outside the window, covering the rooftops and streets below. Albert remains at his desk. The school is nearly empty. Somewhere in the distance, a bell sounds through the town. He watches the snow for a very long time. The world outside grows still. The world inside grows quiet. And within that silence, his thoughts continue to wander. What is light? What is time? Could the universe work differently than people imagine? He has no answers, only questions. Yet the questions themselves bring him comfort. Many years later, the world would remember Albert Einstein as one of the greatest thinkers who ever lived. But here, in this old classroom beside a winter window, he is simply a young student, a young man sitting alone, listening to the snow, watching the evening, dreaming quietly. As darkness settles over the school, Albert finally closes his books. He stands beside the tall window one last time. The snow continues to fall. The mountains have disappeared into the night. The empty classroom grows darker with every passing moment. And somewhere within the silence, the first ideas of a remarkable future begin to take shape. Tomorrow the students will return. The lessons will continue. The desks will once again be filled. But tonight, the classroom belongs only to the young student beside the window. And the quiet has become his greatest teacher. Winter remains over Switzerland. The mornings arrive quietly, wrapped in mist and pale light. Frost gathers along the edges of the classroom windows, and the streets outside appear almost asleep beneath the cold air. Albert continues to arrive early. The school corridors remain silent as he walks toward his classroom. His footsteps echo softly against the wooden floors, and the old building seems to awaken slowly around him. He takes his usual seat beside the window. Outside, the mountains rest beneath the clouds. Inside, books wait patiently upon his desk. For Albert, mathematics is becoming more than a subject. It feels almost like a language hidden beneath the world itself. While other students memorize formulas, Albert wishes to understand why they exist. A simple equation can occupy his thoughts for hours. A geometric shape can become a mystery. Numbers appear to possess their own quiet order, their own certainty, and this certainty comforts him. The world around him often feels confusing. People change their minds. Opinions differ. Days pass quickly, but mathematics remains steady. Two lines meet where they must meet. Numbers behave as they always have. The universe itself seems to follow invisible rules. One afternoon, a teacher writes a geometric proof upon the blackboard. The other students copy it into their notebooks. Albert stares at the shapes, lines, angles, circles. Something about them feels beautiful, not simply useful, beautiful. He begins reading mathematical books beyond his lessons. During evenings, while lamps glow softly inside his room, he studies pages filled with symbols and ideas. Outside, the town grows dark. Snow gathers quietly upon rooftops. The wind moves through the narrow streets. Yet inside his small room, another world opens. The world of numbers. The world of thought. Hours pass unnoticed. Sometimes he looks up from his books and watches the moonlight falling through the window. The mountains appear silver beneath the night sky. The silence of Switzerland surrounds him, and within that silence, his imagination grows stronger. Albert begins asking questions that few around him seem interested in. How does light travel? What happens inside a beam of light? Can time move differently? Could the universe work according to laws not yet discovered? These questions do not trouble him. They excite him. Many evenings he walks home slowly after class. The streets are empty. Lanterns burn softly beside doors. The sound of distant bells travels through the cold air. As he walks, his thoughts continue. He imagines the stars above him. He wonders how far their light has traveled. He wonders whether time itself might behave differently in distant places. The sky above Switzerland becomes his greatest book. One evening, after the students have left, Albert remains once again inside the classroom. The room grows darker. Only the fading light from the tall window illuminates the desks. He opens a mathematics book and begins reading quietly. Outside, snow begins to fall. Inside, the silence deepens. The old classroom feels timeless. The ticking of a clock echoes somewhere in the hall. The fire inside a distant room crackles softly. Albert loses all sense of time. Numbers fill his thoughts. Patterns begin to appear. The universe no longer feels random. Instead, it feels like a great mystery waiting to be understood. He does not dream of becoming famous. He does not imagine changing science. He simply wishes to know, to understand, to ask, to learn. As the evening becomes night, he finally closes the book. He stands beside the window. Snow covers the streets below. The town lights shine through the falling snow. Far beyond the rooftops, the mountains disappear into darkness. The young student places his hand against the cold glass. Somewhere beyond those mountains lies an entire universe. And somewhere within his mind, questions continue to grow. The empty classroom remains silent. The old desks rest beneath the shadows. The books wait upon the shelves. And beside the window sits a young student who has begun to discover that mathematics is not merely a subject. It is a doorway into the hidden order of the universe. And as winter settles over Switzerland, Albert Einstein quietly steps through it. Spring begins to arrive quietly in Switzerland. The snow that once covered the rooftops slowly disappears. The rivers move more freely, carrying the cold waters from the mountains. Small flowers appear beside stone paths, and the trees outside the classroom begin to show their first green leaves. The days become longer. Sunlight remains upon the town well into the evening, and the air carries the fresh scent of rain and earth. Albert notices these changes. He has always paid attention to small things: the movement of clouds, the sound of distant bells, the reflection of light upon water. And now, as winter fades, he begins spending more time outside. After his lessons have ended and the other students have returned home, Albert often walks alone through the streets of Switzerland. The old town seems to change during the evening hours. Shopkeepers close their doors. Wooden signs swing gently in the breeze. Lanterns are lit one by one. The narrow streets grow quieter. Many people hurry home before darkness falls, but Albert walks slowly. He has nowhere he needs to be. His thoughts keep him company. Sometimes he follows the river. The water moves quietly beneath old stone bridges. The fading sunlight dances across its surface, creating small patterns of gold and silver. He stops and watches. The river never appears the same twice. The light changes. The water changes. Yet somehow it remains the same river. Questions arise once again. How can something constantly change and still remain itself? Why does time feel different during certain moments? Why do some evenings seem to pass quickly while others stretch endlessly? The streets around him remain silent. Only the sound of footsteps accompanies him. On certain evenings, the sky becomes filled with clouds. Rain falls gently upon the rooftops. The windows of nearby homes glow with warm light. Inside, families gather for supper. Outside, Albert continues walking beneath his umbrella. He enjoys the rain. The world feels quieter when it rains. The sounds of the town become softer. The streets become empty. The reflections of lamps appear upon the wet stones. He walks slowly, listening to the falling rain. At times, he carries a small notebook. If a thought enters his mind, he writes it down. Most of these thoughts are simple questions. Some concern mathematics. Others concern nature. A few concern time itself. He wonders whether time passes equally for everyone. He wonders whether motion changes the way we experience the world. These ideas remain distant and unclear, yet they continue to return. As the weeks pass, Albert becomes familiar with every street. The old clock tower, the narrow bridges, the small cafes, the bookshops with their dark windows, the benches beside the river. Each place offers him a moment of peace. Sometimes he enters a quiet cafe. He sits alone near the window while the evening light slowly disappears outside. The room smells of coffee and wood. Soft conversations fill the air. Students discuss their lessons. Travelers speak quietly. The owner wipes glasses behind the counter. Albert opens a book and reads. Or sometimes he simply watches the rain against the glass. He does not feel lonely. He feels comfortable. The world asks very little of him during these moments. He is free to think, free to wonder, free to imagine. One evening, as the sun sets behind the mountains, Albert climbs a small hill overlooking the town. Below him, Switzerland stretches quietly into the distance. The rooftops glow beneath the final light of day. Church bells ring. Smoke rises from chimneys. The river reflects the colors of the evening sky. He sits upon a bench. The air grows colder. The mountains appear almost endless. For a long time he says nothing. He simply watches. The stars begin to appear, one by one. The same stars he watched as a child. The same stars that continue their journeys through the universe. He wonders how far away they truly are, how long their light has traveled, whether the light reaching his eyes tonight began its journey long before he was born. These thoughts fill him with both wonder and peace. The universe suddenly feels vast, yet somehow connected. Everything moves, everything changes, and somewhere within those changes may exist simple rules that explain everything. The night grows darker. The town below becomes quiet. The lamps along the streets begin to shine. Albert finally stands and begins walking home. His footsteps echo softly along the stone roads. The cool air surrounds him, and his thoughts continue. Back inside his room, he lights a small lamp. The books upon his desk wait patiently. Outside, the mountains disappear into darkness. Inside, the young student opens another book. Hours pass quietly. The room remains silent. Only the turning of pages breaks the stillness. He studies mathematics. He studies science. But most importantly, he studies the questions that continue to live inside his mind. Many years later, people would imagine great discoveries happening inside laboratories and universities. Yet some of the most important ideas begin during these simple evenings. A quiet walk, a river, a mountain, a lamp shining through a rainy window, a student walking alone through the streets of Switzerland. As midnight approaches, Albert closes his books and looks once more through his window. The town sleeps peacefully. The stars remain above the mountains. The river continues to flow. And somewhere within the silence of the night, a young mind continues to search for answers. Tomorrow, the classroom will once again fill with students. Lessons will continue. Teachers will write upon the blackboard. But tonight belongs to the evening, to the quiet streets, to the mountains, and to the long walks that allow a young Albert Einstein to dream. For sometimes, the greatest discoveries do not begin inside laboratories. They begin during a solitary walk beneath the evening sky, when the world grows quiet enough for questions to be heard. Summer slowly arrives in Switzerland. The cold winds of winter have long disappeared, and the mountains now stand clearly beneath bright blue skies. The rivers flow gently through the towns, carrying the melted snow toward distant valleys. Trees sway softly in the warm air, and the evening light lingers far longer than it once did. For Albert, these longer evenings become precious. After his lessons end and the streets begin to quiet, he often remains beside the classroom window, watching the golden sunlight slowly fade across the mountains. The old building becomes silent around him. The wooden desks rest quietly beneath the dim light, and the distant sounds of the town slowly disappear. The world seems to slow down. And when the world slows, Albert's thoughts become stronger. For many months, one particular question has continued to return to him. What is light? The question appears simple. Every person sees light. The sun rises each morning. Lamps glow in the evening. Stars shine above the mountains. Yet the more he thinks about it, the stranger light becomes. One evening, while sitting alone beside the classroom window, Albert imagines something unusual. He imagines himself running, faster and faster, across fields, across mountains, across the world itself, and ahead of him travels a beam of light. He asks himself a question. What would happen if someone could run beside a beam of light? What would it look like? Would the light appear frozen? Would it continue moving? Would time itself change? He cannot answer these questions. No teacher has explained them. No book has given him an answer. Yet the questions refuse to leave him. They follow him through the streets. They sit beside him during lessons. They accompany him during his evening walks. As the days pass, the idea grows stronger. Sometimes he lies awake at night listening to the sounds of the town outside his window. The distant bell towers mark the passing hours. The wind moves softly through the trees. Moonlight enters the room, and still he thinks about light. He begins to realize that imagination may be as important as knowledge. Books provide information. Teachers provide lessons. But imagination allows the mind to travel where knowledge cannot yet reach. Albert enjoys these journeys. While others dream of distant countries or adventures, he dreams of invisible things. Light, time, motion, the hidden rules of the universe. One afternoon, dark clouds gather above the mountains. Rain begins to fall over the town. Most students hurry home, but Albert remains inside the classroom. The rain strikes the windows softly. Thunder echoes far away. The room grows darker. Only a small amount of light remains. Albert watches the rain move down the glass. Each drop catches the fading sunlight. Tiny reflections appear and disappear. Light bends. Light changes. Light travels. He wonders whether the universe itself might be built upon such invisible movements. The classroom becomes completely silent. Outside, the storm continues. Inside, a young student sits alone with his thoughts. Many people believe that discoveries happen suddenly, that ideas appear like lightning. But for Albert, ideas grow slowly. They begin as small questions. Questions become thoughts. Thoughts become dreams. And dreams gradually become understanding. As summer evenings continue, Albert spends more time beside the river. The sunlight remains long after supper. The mountains glow orange beneath the setting sun. The surface of the water reflects the sky. He sits quietly upon a bench. The world around him feels peaceful. Children play nearby. Boats drift slowly across the lake. Birds move through the evening air. Yet even here, his thoughts return to light. The sunlight touching the mountains. The reflections upon the water. The stars that will soon appear. Everything depends upon light. Without it, the world would remain hidden. One evening, after sunset, he watches the first stars appear. Their light has traveled enormous distances. Some of those stars may already be gone, and yet their light continues arriving. It is almost as though the past itself can still be seen. This idea fascinates him. Perhaps time and light are connected. Perhaps the universe is stranger than anyone realizes. The town below becomes quiet. Windows begin to glow. The mountains disappear into darkness. Albert remains seated. The stars continue to multiply above him. For a moment, he feels very small. A student, a young man, one person beneath an endless sky. Yet he also feels connected to something larger. The same light that reaches the mountains reaches him. The same stars seen by generations continue to shine. The universe appears silent, but perhaps it is speaking through light itself. Later that night, he returns to his room. A small lamp burns upon his desk. Books remain open beside the window. The air is warm. The town sleeps. Albert writes several thoughts into his notebook. Simple questions, simple ideas, nothing more. Yet those questions will remain with him for many years. The young student cannot know what lies ahead. He cannot know that these quiet evenings in Switzerland will one day influence discoveries that change science forever. He is simply a student, a dreamer, a young man sitting beside a window while the night grows deeper. Outside, the stars continue their endless journeys. Inside, another journey has already begun. The journey of a mind following light itself. And as midnight approaches, Albert extinguishes the lamp. Darkness fills the room. The mountains rest beneath the stars. The river continues to flow. And somewhere within the silence of Switzerland, a young student dreams of riding beside a beam of light into the unknown. By the time another autumn arrives in Switzerland, the familiar streets have become part of Albert's daily life. The old stone buildings no longer feel strange. The narrow roads, the quiet bridges, the evening bells, and the distant mountains have all become companions to him. The classroom beside the tall window feels almost like a second home. The leaves begin to fall once again. Golden colors appear along the streets. Cool winds return to the town, carrying with them the scent of rain and wood smoke. Students arrive wearing heavier coats, and the mornings grow darker with each passing week. Albert continues his routines. He attends his classes. He reads late into the night. He walks beside the river. And he spends long evenings sitting alone inside the empty classroom. Yet during this season, something begins to change. Although Albert enjoys solitude, he slowly discovers the value of conversation. Not large gatherings, not crowded rooms, only a few quiet conversations with people who enjoy asking questions as much as he does. Some students remain after class. They discuss mathematics. They speak about science, philosophy, and the nature of the universe. The classroom, which once belonged entirely to silence, occasionally fills with gentle voices. One student wonders whether human knowledge has limits. Another asks whether mathematics exists independently of the human mind. Someone speaks of philosophy. Another speaks of astronomy. Albert listens carefully. He rarely speaks first, but when he does, his words are thoughtful. Questions emerge. Ideas grow. The old classroom becomes more than a place of study. It becomes a place of thought. Outside, rain falls softly against the tall windows. Inside, the students sit beneath the fading light. Books remain open upon their desks. The air smells of paper, wood, and chalk. Hours pass unnoticed. No one realizes that these quiet conversations may shape the future. One evening, after most students have left, Albert and a friend remain beside the window. The town outside is already dark. The lamps along the street have begun to glow. Rain travels slowly down the glass. They speak about time. Why does an hour sometimes feel short and sometimes long? Why does motion appear differently depending upon where one stands? Can two people experience the same moment differently? The questions seem impossible, yet they feel important. Albert enjoys these conversations because they do not seek immediate answers. They allow uncertainty. They allow wonder. Many people wish to solve problems quickly. Albert wishes to understand them deeply. As autumn continues, the evenings grow colder. The students gather occasionally in small cafes near the school. The rooms are warm. Small lamps illuminate the tables. Outside, the streets remain quiet. Inside, conversations continue. Some students discuss examinations. Others discuss their future professions. But Albert often returns to the same subjects: light, time, nature, the hidden laws that govern the universe. He speaks gently. He listens carefully. And although he remains quiet, his curiosity becomes visible to those around him. One friend later recalls that Albert seemed less interested in memorizing facts than in understanding why things existed at all. For Albert, every answer produced another question. Every discovery opened another door. During one particularly cold evening, snow begins to fall once again. The students leave the cafe one by one. Albert walks alone through the streets. Snow gathers upon the rooftops. The lamps cast golden circles upon the ground. The entire town appears silent. He walks slowly. His footsteps disappear beneath the falling snow. The questions from the evening continue within his mind. Could time depend upon movement? Could the universe behave differently than people imagine? The stars above remain hidden behind the clouds, yet somehow he feels close to them. When he reaches his room, he lights a lamp and opens a notebook. He writes down several thoughts. Nothing complete, only ideas, questions, possibilities. Many years later, people will search through his writings, hoping to understand how great ideas begin. But in these moments, there are no great discoveries. Only a young student sitting beside a lamp while snow falls outside. Outside his window, Switzerland sleeps. Inside, curiosity remains awake. The following weeks pass quietly. The classroom grows darker as winter approaches. Students prepare for examinations. Teachers assign more work. Yet Albert still finds time to remain beside the window after everyone has left. Sometimes he remembers the conversations. Sometimes he replays certain questions. Sometimes he simply watches the fading light. Friendship, he discovers, is not always about companionship. Sometimes it is about sharing curiosity, sharing silence, sharing the willingness to ask questions that have no answers. The old classroom becomes peaceful once again. The desks stand empty. The wind moves gently outside. Albert sits alone. But now he knows that somewhere within the school are others who also wonder, others who also question, others who also look beyond the ordinary world. This knowledge brings him comfort. As winter finally returns to Switzerland, the first frost appears upon the classroom windows. The mountains disappear beneath clouds. The river grows cold. The evenings arrive early. Albert closes his books and stands beside the window. The town below glows softly beneath the falling snow. For a moment, he remains completely still. The world feels quiet. The future remains uncertain. Yet his mind continues moving. Questions continue growing. Ideas continue forming. And somewhere within these quiet conversations, these small friendships, and these long evenings beside the window, a young Albert Einstein is slowly becoming the thinker he was meant to be. The classroom grows dark. The snow continues to fall. And the old building settles into silence once again. Winter returns once more to Switzerland. Snow settles quietly upon the rooftops, covering the streets, the bridges, and the distant hills in white. The river continues to flow through the town, though more slowly now, and the cold air carries the sound of church bells farther than before. Inside the old school, the classrooms remain warm. The familiar wooden desks stand beneath the tall windows. The lamps burn softly during the darker afternoons, and Albert still chooses the same seat beside the glass. Years have passed since he first arrived in Switzerland. The young student who once walked through these streets with uncertainty has grown older. His questions have grown deeper, his understanding has expanded, and his curiosity remains stronger than ever. Yet another question now enters his mind. What happens next? The future, which once seemed distant, slowly approaches. The lessons will soon end. The examinations will be completed. The quiet days of study cannot continue forever. Many students already speak about their futures. Some will become teachers. Some will become engineers. Others will enter businesses or government offices. They discuss plans with confidence. They speak of opportunities and ambitions. Albert listens quietly. He has never found such questions easy. He knows what interests him. He knows what he wishes to understand. But he does not yet know where his path will lead. This uncertainty follows him through the winter. During his walks beside the river, he thinks about the years ahead. The snow falls softly around him. The lamps reflect upon the frozen streets. The mountains disappear behind clouds. And still he wonders, will he become a teacher? Will he continue studying? Will anyone care about the questions that fill his mind? Some evenings, these thoughts bring concern. The world beyond the classroom feels large and uncertain. The old school has become a place of comfort. The familiar desks, the quiet corridors, the tall windows, the evening light. Soon all of it may disappear. One afternoon, after classes have ended, Albert remains alone in the classroom. Outside, snow drifts across the courtyard. The room has become almost completely silent. He looks around slowly. The shelves, the chalkboard, the empty desks. How many evenings has he spent here? How many questions have begun within these walls? The room has witnessed his doubts, his curiosity, and his dreams. And now it witnesses his uncertainty. He opens one of his notebooks. Inside are pages filled with ideas. Questions about light. Thoughts about time. Small observations about nature. Nothing appears extraordinary. Only the thoughts of a student. Yet these pages represent something important. They represent his desire to understand. Outside, the wind grows stronger. Snow strikes the windows. The afternoon light slowly disappears. Albert closes the notebook and watches the storm. Life often feels similar to the weather outside. Clear one moment, uncertain the next. Many people seem certain about their futures. Albert does not, and perhaps that is what troubles him most. He speaks occasionally with his friends. Some share his concerns. Others encourage him. They remind him of his abilities, his understanding, his curiosity. Yet uncertainty remains. One evening, he walks through the town after fresh snow has fallen. The streets are nearly empty. The shops have closed. Only the warm light from windows illuminates the darkness. As he crosses a small bridge, he stops. The river below moves silently beneath the ice. The mountains stand hidden beyond the clouds. The world feels very still. He realizes that uncertainty may not be something to fear. The river does not know exactly where each current will travel. The snow does not know where it will fall. The stars continue their journeys without hesitation. Perhaps life moves in a similar way. Perhaps questions themselves can guide a person. This thought brings him some peace. He returns to his room. The lamp burns softly upon the desk. Outside, snow continues to fall. Inside, he opens another book. Mathematics still comforts him. Ideas still excite him. Questions still fill his mind. Whatever the future holds, these things remain. As winter deepens, the school grows quieter. The students become occupied with examinations. Teachers speak of results. The pressure of the coming months becomes visible upon many faces. Yet Albert still finds moments of solitude. He still sits beside the window. He still watches the evening sky. He still imagines beams of light crossing the universe. One night, after everyone has gone home, he remains inside the classroom longer than usual. The room is dark except for a single lamp. Snow covers the courtyard outside. The silence feels almost sacred. He thinks about his childhood, the compass, the first questions, the stars, the journey to Switzerland, the long walks, the empty classroom, the conversations, the dreams of light. Everything has led to this moment. Not answers, not certainty, only the understanding that questions matter. Perhaps that is enough. As the lamp burns lower, Albert stands and walks toward the window. His reflection appears in the glass. Behind him rests the old classroom. Before him lies the snowy town. Beyond the town stand the mountains. And somewhere beyond those mountains waits the future. He cannot see it. He cannot predict it. But he no longer fears it. For he has learned something during these years in Switzerland. Curiosity can guide a person through uncertainty. Questions can illuminate darkness. And the search for understanding is itself a journey worth taking. The clock somewhere within the school strikes the late hour. Albert gathers his books. He extinguishes the lamp. The classroom falls into darkness. Outside, snow continues to drift beneath the night sky. The old building grows silent. And a young student walks slowly home through the winter streets, carrying with him nothing more than books, questions, and a quiet hope for the future. For soon, the world beyond Switzerland will begin to open. And the young man who once sat alone beside a classroom window will step into a new chapter of his life. The final winter slowly begins to leave Switzerland. Snow melts from the rooftops, the river moves freely once again, and the first signs of spring appear beside the old streets. The mountains remain unchanged, standing quietly beyond the town, just as they always have. For Albert, these familiar sights now feel different. The classroom beside the window remains the same. The wooden desks still rest beneath the soft afternoon light. The shelves still hold their books. The old clock still marks the passing hours. Yet he knows that his time here is drawing to a close. One evening, after the other students have left, Albert remains alone inside the classroom one final time. The sun is setting beyond the mountains. Golden light enters through the tall windows and falls across the empty desks. The room is silent. He sits beside the window just as he has done countless times before. He remembers the first days, the uncertainty, the quiet walks, the snow outside the glass, the evenings spent reading beneath a lamp, the conversations with friends, the questions that followed him through every season. What is light? What is time? Why does the universe behave as it does? The questions remain, but now they feel less frightening. He has learned that not every question requires an immediate answer. Some questions must simply be carried. Outside, the evening bells ring softly across the town. The streets begin to grow quiet. The mountains slowly disappear into the fading light. Albert stands and walks slowly toward the window. For a long moment, he simply looks outside. The river continues to flow. The lamps begin to glow. The same world that welcomed him years ago now prepares to say goodbye. He does not know what awaits him. He does not know where life will lead. But he knows that the curiosity born in these classrooms will travel with him. The old school has taught him many things: mathematics, science, patience, solitude, and perhaps most importantly, it has taught him how to wonder. The last light of evening slowly disappears. The classroom becomes dark. Albert gathers his books. He places his hand gently upon the wooden desk beside the window. Then he walks toward the door. Behind him, the empty classroom remains silent. Ahead of him lies the future. Outside, the first stars appear above the mountains of Switzerland. And somewhere beneath that quiet night sky, a young student begins the next chapter of his life. Many years later, the world would know the name Albert Einstein. But on this evening, he is simply a young man leaving a classroom, carrying his books through the quiet streets, while the lights of Switzerland glow softly behind him. The window grows dark. The mountains fade into the night, and the story gently comes to an end.